Kia ora noa. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel and I'm here talking about well-being and activism. I'm starting off with this series of advice for new activists. Just as someone who's been there, I'm no expert in well-being, but I want to be able to do great activism and feel good as well at the same time, and I want that for our movement and the people in our movements, right? So this advice is, I've been saying this every video, this is the third part, but you know, these are just my reflections, the things that I wish I knew going in, and the things that I'll be telling myself as I go forward in my activism, trying to keep well-being at the forefront. So yeah, take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't. I'm really sorry there's some little planes going over my house at the moment, and this is the only time I can record, so I hope that the sound quality isn't too bad, but I'll do the captioning as well. Yeah, so diving into today's piece of advice, protect your passion. You know, the fact that you give a fuck is like your superpower. We often talk, you know, there's kind of this such common saying of, you know, this movement or this campaign or whatever runs on the smell of an oily rag. But it doesn't, eh? It runs on the pith and vinegar of people like you. We don't have a lot of resources in our movements typically. We run on people's ability to care deeply and put their time and energy into something that they really care about, because we want to see a better world. And it might seem hard to imagine if you're new to this stuff, especially if you've just kind of newly learnt information or newly kind of looked around and understood that some terrible injustices are happening, or some horribly scary environmental damage or whatever is happening, and you know, you're full of the rage, or and this could be happening at the same time, you've discovered some beautiful new way of doing things and you're all excited about this different way that we could be, this different possibility. And so you might be so energized by rage and love and just readiness to give your time and energy and your heart to bringing down these things that are making people hurt, and raising up these things that could make the people or the planet, or, you know, animals or whatever, live happier lives. So while you're all full of that new, let's call it new activist energy, it can be hard to imagine that energy could run out, but it can. Burnout, I keep saying this probably every episode, but burnout is really common for activists. This is part of the thing that motivates me to do this, or this is actually the entire thing that motivates me to do this this channel. And burnout isn't just about being tired and needing a break. The actual clinical definition of burnout is a loss of passion. And so I wanted to unpack that a little bit. I wanted to talk about our ability to care deeply and how we can care for our ability to care deeply. Once you lose that ability to care deeply, it can take some time to rejuvenate and to get back into wanting to put your care into things. And I think, so yeah, I want to talk about that. And I think one of the thing that it took me far too long to learn is that the main way that I can protect my ability to care, and I'll be interested to know how this resonates with other people, I think this is common for lots of us, that my ability to protect my ability to care relies on being able to put those cares down sometimes, not to be holding so tight to them 24 hours a day, every day of the week. And I think that there's a culture in a lot of our activist scenes of that makes it harder to put our cares down as well. So I think when you kind of come into activist scenes, you're surrounded by, again, people with a lot of knowledge of different injustices that are happening, world events that are happening, current news events, and there's and also the political theory, the history of everything, and there can be a pressure to not only learn a lot so that you kind of understand the background behind a lot of stuff, that you're trying to change, but also to be continually paying attention to and gaining new information and not just new information. Actually, say if we're talking about something like paying attention to current events in the news, to know what's happening and to care. Because we're building identities and relationships around the fact that we care. And so it can be really awkward when, somebody says to you at work or at your meeting, oh, did you hear the news last night about, let's say, a group of children that have been assaulted somewhere in the country. And that moment of shame and sort of I'm a fraud that washes through you that says, oh God, I was watching Catfish last night, I didn't watch the news, I'm not like this person who checks the news website at 11 o'clock before they go to bed kind of thing. Do I not care as much as I think I care, or as I'm presenting that I care? And I think of it, as I've said in the earlier episodes, part of that is just ego stuff. We need to put down this expectation on ourselves and each other that we're all going to be the perfect activists, and be okay with, not being on top of everything and not putting our hearts into everything. So part of it is that. But I think even aside from that social pressure, when you do want to know everything that's happening and try to be up to speed with stuff, and you do care deeply about things, all these things impact on you, And I think that social media also makes it harder. Like, it used to be just the news or whatever. Now I find that I go onto Facebook and, having a lot of political friends, my news feed is just full of, climate change stuff, stuff about Trump, stuff about trans people's rights, Palestine, just endless different things that, and I care about them all. But there's kind of that feeling of, I need to read and share or at least like all these things, otherwise my friend will think that I don't care about this cause or that cause that they're interested in. And I've found over time that when I go onto Facebook, it depends what's going on in my life. If I'm really, really busy with some big piece of work, I just don't have emotional or mental space for all of that caring. And there have been so many times where all I want to see on Facebook is pictures of people's dogs and their kids, I'm like, please don't show me anything else that breaks my heart, because my heart needs a rest, I guess is what I'm saying. And I used to feel a lot of shame and confusion about that stuff. And even within the work that we're doing, there's always so much to hold, there's the issue itself that you're working on, there's the personal relationships, in the group that you're working with. There's wider community relationships. There's the people and the systems that you're trying to affect, and how do they work, and how do I best influence this person? How do I best explain it to that person? It's a lot to hold, and I often struggle to put some of that stuff down. I'm a classic overthinker, and I imagine lots of people can relate to that. But it was really interesting. A few years ago, I was working for the sexual violence sector. I was exhausted. I was putting on a national conference, and in my first year of working there, I didn't have enough time to get it done, and I was also grieving. I'd lost 3 people close to me within 6 months, and I was just a bit of a wreck. But I wasn't sleeping at night because I'd be lying awake, knowing that I was exhausted and needed a break, but I'd be lying awake thinking, how do I bridge the gap between the male survivors and the rest of sexual violence sector, and all the things, how do I convince my manager that we need to spend the money for this conference to have sign language interpreters, all the things that I was trying to hold, all things that I did care deeply about. And, but I couldn't rest. And just by accident, really, I came across these meditations by Jessica Mullen, and I'll link one in the caption below, where she has this wonderful phrase that I've carried with me ever since, which is, guiding you through the meditation, which is breathing in, I love myself, breathing out, I don't give a fuck. And I don't give a fuck. And in the middle of the night, I needed to be told that. I needed that to come through my ears from somebody else to say, I don't care, I'm putting this down now. And at first I was really conflicted about it when I heard her say that. I was, part of me was going, oh, but what? No, how? Of course I care. Like, I care deeply. Caring is central to who I am as a person, and it's what motivates me, and I can't not care about these things that are so important. And another part of me was like, yes, oh my God, fuck it, fuck all of it, I don't give a fuck, I never want to think about it again, I never want to think about anything again. And I guess it's through that experience that I really learned that to protect your ability to care, you need to not care sometimes. You need to give yourself some space to just be idle and relax. And to trust that you can put your cares down, you can put down the things that you give a fuck about and say, I don't give a fuck right now. And that you will still care again in the morning, that you won't somehow revert to this completely selfish, isolated, I'm just going to live a nice, simple life now that doesn't have to be in the struggle. And if anything, it's the other way around, like if you keep being like, oh, I've got to hold all this, and you do burn out, you might have to spend months or even a couple of years rebuilding up that ability to care, right? So better to do it on a nightly basis and a weekly basis and stuff than, feeling like you need to hold it all and then just wear out that empathy is what I'm saying. We need to protect our ability to be empathetic. And so the other thing I wanted to say about this is when you're taking in a lot of that information, videos, documentaries, Twitter feeds, you're taking in a lot of information of harm that's happening and things that are a concern to you. I really want to say at the times when we all get sad and tired sometimes and just need a rest. We all sometimes just have to take a break from our campaign. It might be inconvenient, you know, we might get sick, whatever. We need to be able to take that time and not beat ourselves with the knowledge of the harm that's going on in the world around us. Not be lying there saying, oh, you know, sure you feel bad, but actually it's not about you. You need to get up and get on with ending the injustices of the world. Don't use your ability to care to beat yourself. You know, be compassionate to yourself as well as, you know, everybody else that you're wanting to help. And don't use other people's ability to care as a weapon against them either. I've seen it so often where, like I used to be part of a animal rights collective where the leader of that group, when there was, you know, political differences and debates, and it was hard in the group and the communication was bad and we were, you know, grinding away, you know, she would send us big rants about the urgency of getting on with the stuff that we needed to be doing, and send us videos of animals being tortured and stuff to be like, this is the stuff that we need to be fighting against. And, you know, we all need to be able to remind ourselves of our priorities sometimes, but using people's empathy to motivate them to do what you want is deeply, I mean, it might work in the short term, but it's deeply harmful to the ongoing motivation of the group, right? So, yeah, don't beat yourself with this. Don't let other people beat you with it, with your compassion, you know, and try not to do it to each other, eh? Nothing alienates me from a cause faster than being told, you know, if you really cared about this, you would shut up and do what I think is right. But I've stayed in multiple jobs and groups that do that, you know. So I've been slow to learn, and it makes me weary, honestly, about getting back involved in politics. So yeah, I would really like to see our activist movements shifting in that way, and you know, and it happens with paid work as well. The other thing I wanted to say about this thing about protecting your ability to care, and it's really also just about giving yourself a break, digging deeper into some of the stuff about why we can't give ourselves a break, why we can't rest. And this makes me think too about needing to lay down the drive to convert everybody to the cause, or the way that we see the world. For me, I definitely spent so much time arguing with people who just weren't interested in some of the things that I was interested in. Veganism, internalized racism, sex workers' legitimate work, polyamory, probably so many other things, right? And I just feel tired now thinking about that. And I think that at the time I would get so angsty about it, thinking, you know, if I can't convince my loved ones, you know, the people in my immediate family, what hope is there of change in society, kind of thing. And I don't think that's the right way to think about it. I think save it for your campaign, you know. Save your energy for your campaign and let yourself rest, and let there be some difference between you and your family members or your loved ones. you don't have to change everybody's mind. And more, I don't even think that good advocacy or good social change is necessarily about learning how to win the argument and trying to persuade other people. I think it's more and more about finding what people are interested in, what their values are, and supporting them to find simple ways to make the change that they want to see in the world. That's sort of getting a little bit off topic, but I think even if you do see your job as to convince people to be doing things differently, save it for your campaign. It's okay to rest. You know, I'm not saying that you have to, if somebody says something that you really disagree with or that is abhorrent to you, feel free to say to them, ugh, I really don't agree and here's why. But you don't have to spend hours trying to change people's mind. And the thing that I realized, after a lot of sort of reflection and space from this, is that I don't even think it was necessarily about good advocacy. I think that it was actually about me feeling like I need sign-off from everybody. And so check in with yourself about that too. How much of it is that you're trying to, make the world a better place? And how much of it is you feeling like you need sign-off from your parents or your flatmates, that your way of thinking is correct and that the things that you want to put energy into are correct. We don't need that sign off. If it makes you feel fizzy, if you're excited about it, you want to get up in the morning and put your energy into it, go for it. You might not, you might change your perspective in the future, but you don't need everybody else agreeing that that's the right way to go, to just go. We need to find that internal permission within ourselves, I think, and not be seeking sign off, so that we can rest when we need to rest and just be comfortable. Be able to have some times when we're genuinely just shutting off from the stuff, so that we can be really present with our loved ones and ourselves, the place that we're in and stuff, to just rejuvenate. And I think that this thing of needing sign off and needing agreement and trying to convert everybody to your way of thinking happens within our movements as well. I feel like we all know somebody who has this attitude, like, if everybody just got on board, focus on the thing that I wanted to focus on, and, for example, focus on labour rights and stopped talking about their stupid identity politics, that the revolution would be over by Friday lunchtime kind of thing, And I get that it's really frustrating that, you like, if you've got a real vision of here's what we could do, and you want everybody to just get on board and push together with you so you can get it done. I get that frustration, but I think how much of it is actually just wasted energy of trying to get everybody else on board with your idea so that you feel like your idea is valid. I think we could set some of that stuff down and relax into the lengthiness of our struggles, the complexity of all of the issues that are going on, and rest within that. And I guess I think I'm going to talk more about this in a later video, but this is also part of the fact of, this great sense of urgency that we can feel like this. There's horrible, horrible things are happening. Oh my God, I'm just this one little person, or we're just this one little group. How are we going to, we've just got to give all of our time and energy that we can to moving it, because it's so big and it needs to end now. God, I feel that so deeply. I so get that. And I'm trying to give that feeling away, because we're part of a history of struggle. You can't just keep going all the time and not rest. If you want to keep going, you have to rest. You have to work. You have to rest so that you can work. And I think that a lot of this urgency, this not being able to put our cares down, I think both sort of the workaholism that can happen within our movements and also the depressive kind of collapse that can happen within our movements are both connected to this kind of anxiety of, oh my God, it's so big, it's so bad, we need to change it, we need to change it now. And I'm interested in finding different ways to confront and move through that anxiety rather than just feeling like you can't set your cares down sometimes, that you have to just push, push, push. I think there's a temptation to, if you're feeling lack of motivation, you're tired, you want a break, and you can't give yourself a break. So, going and looking at more videos, for example, of suffering and stuff to try to push yourself to do something about it. I think that's damaging. I think, if you're feeling that way and you're wanting to motivate yourself to get up off the couch and get back to the struggle, I mean, ideally, I think, go and lie in the grass and look at the sky, or have a nice hot cup of hot chocolate and talk with your roommate about music that you love or something, or anything that just actually makes you feel some relaxation and joy. But if you can't do that, I think at least look for the places of inspiration in terms of movements that are working well, change that's happening. Look for surround yourselves with the people, instead of, spending the time arguing with the people that don't agree with you and don't want to focus on what you want to focus on. Seek out the people that are focusing on the stuff that you're into and that make you feel excited and that kind of lift you up and it feels all energized and, seek out the things that give you hope, I guess is what I'm saying, rather than seeking out the reminders of how shitty it all is. And like I say, it's okay to say I don't give a fuck, and know that you still will give a fuck so much in the morning, or next week. That's it. I don't really have any other advice, and this is the kind of stuff why people get into mindfulness and things like that. Those things are really great. But yeah, I'm not necessarily here to tell you all the lifestyle things you should take on. I'm here to say, what can we let go of? What can we just set down? So yeah, that's me for this one. Thanks for joining me again. I think I'm going to do about 2 more parts in this series, and I was a bit. I think that this experience of not being able to lay down our cares is probably quite common, but I'm not really sure. Maybe heaps of people don't feel this way. So let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what other people's experiences are, or what other people's advice is for being somebody that cares deeply. How we can care for our ability to keep this empathy alive. As I've said before, I know that there's so much knowledge out there. I just have my little pieces, and I'm keen to spark some conversation so we can all be caring about ourselves and our movements going forward together. So take care. Noho ora mai.